Hello and welcome to Fowl Plays, where we look at tales of tabletop tragedy that are sure to ruffle some feathers. I'm your host BossGoose, and today we have two stories for you, both of which feature players whose preferred method for getting what they want is throwing temper tantrums, much to the chagrin of their parties. So buckle up as we prepare to descend into screaming, tears, sabotage, PvP, rules lawyering, and the ever-dreaded words, "It's what my character would do," as we follow the misadventures of these two miscreants. Before we get started though, grab your d20s because it's time to double dash out of here. With the spirit of the lady of the house banished, you watch as the portraits on the wall, one by one, begin to decay and fall. The room shakes violently as bookshelves topple over and cracks form in the ceiling and walls. It seems that without its master, the manor has become increasingly unstable, and we need to get out of here fast. It's going to take an athletics check to move quickly enough and make it past all the obstacles in our way. So go ahead and roll your dice, and if your last character had proficiency in athletics, take that roll with advantage as we check the results in 3, 2, 1. And if you rolled 15 or higher, you were able to sidestep the falling furniture, jump the gap of the partially collapsed stairs, and crash through the manor's front door, which is no longer being held shut magically. As we reach the gates, we turn to watch as the once grand estate crumbles before our very eyes, and after a long night are finally able to return to the comfort of our beds, treasure in hand. Alternatively, if you rolled 14 or below, then the escape is difficult and we aren't able to get ahead of the falling debris. Luckily, if you hit my extremely versatile subscribe button, then not only can we use that as a shield to protect ourselves as we make our escape, but it will also provide updates whenever new content is available on my channel and easy access to tons of existing videos that'll keep you entertained for hours. But without any further delays, it's time to take your seats and wet your beaks as we dive on into today's tales. Our first story is titled Temper Tantrums from a 20-something-year-old. This happened a few years ago, but I wanted to contribute something to this sub finally. When I first started grad school, I joined a D&D group that my now very good friend was DMing. He was a rookie DM, and almost all the players were newbies too, myself included. Honestly, it was super fun, and everyone was very chill and encouraging. Except one player, who we'll call Curtis. Everyone in the party was good or neutral, except Curtis, who was playing a chaotic evil fighter that would sometimes actively try to sabotage our goals or antagonize us. Red flag number 1. When his plans failed, he felt like everyone and the DM were plotting against his character. He was usually whiny and short-tempered, but the first actual tantrum he had was about his superiority die. He had used all of his charges, and when the DM reminded him of this, he went full-on 5-year-old and threw his dice across the table while pouting. Red flag number 2. But the ultimate meltdown happened one session while the party was escorting an NPC to a magic item that would also help the party. The NPC was an interesting guy who got along with all of us, especially my glamour bard. Out of the blue, Curtis decides to start bullying the NPC and trying to steal his belongings right in front of everyone. The monk in our party steps up and confronts Curtis, which ultimately ends up in the dreaded player versus player combat since Curtis refused to back off. Wanting to also help out the NPC, my bard starts giving inspiration to the monk, and this is where Curtis loses it. Red in the face, he screams out of character. "I'm just doing what my character would do and everyone is attacking me. You all just clearly hate me, so I guess I'll just leave and be done playing with you." After that uncomfortable outburst, we calmly explained that it wasn't personal, and that our characters were standing up for their friend, because we were doing what our characters would do too. We said we did still want to play with him, but we wanted to play with him, where we could all be working together. He tweaked his character a little bit after that to be more of a team player, but everyone still walked on eggshells when he was at the table. He graduated a few months later and moved away, and we went on to have so many great sessions and one-shots with the best people I've ever played with. I don't know what Curtis is up to now, but hopefully he's doing okay and learned from that session if he's still playing. I've never really understood the whole wanting to make an evil character who sabotages the rest of the group thing. That's not to say I don't think it can make for compelling dynamics to have a character who was once an enemy, for example, be forced to aid the party for whatever reason, and maybe that character is duplicitous and they don't get along with everybody. But we all know, out of character, that the core of the game is coming together as a group to either unravel mysteries, defeat monstrosities, complete quests, or just have some good old-fashioned RP. Creating a character and having them actively antagonize and sabotage the group without a good reason behind it, and let's face it, chaotic evil is just an excuse to be a dick more often than not. So all you're really accomplishing here is making it difficult for the other players to justify keeping your character around. It is funny though that even though he was the one playing the character who was actively hindering the party, he took great offense to them actually standing against his efforts and accused them of hating him. Of course they're not going to help the guy who just a minute ago tried to rob the quest NPC. I did like that they Uno reverse card his "it's what my character would do" on him though, because yeah, it makes sense that the party would help the NPC that they all like rather than the guy who's been causing them problems. Those little fits and tantrums would have been really uncomfortable too. Doing this in a group dynamic because you didn't get your way, at best makes you come across as a child. And after giving a warning, if it persisted, I would have asked Curtis to leave my table. But I don't want to come down too hard on him though, because it sounds like he actually did make an effort to change after the outburst and be more of a team player, which is more growth than most of the bad actors in these stories ever experience. Like OP, I hope that he took this experience as a way to grow as a person and has turned into an exemplary player. Now on to our second story, simply known as the Potion Incident. TLDR, I, Barbarian, want to take a small sip of something that may or may not be a potion. Bard takes great offense, says I can't do that, throws a tantrum, and refuses to play unless we follow rules as written to the letter, despite the Dungeon Master Guide encouraging you to make the game your own. The game was never the same after the incident. So a few years ago, we had this campaign running, which was run by my now ex. Looking back, there were so many problems with this game. He catered to my best friend's character to a cringe level, which I was fine with as she was my bestie, but he was literally trying to gain her sexual attention through D&D while in a relationship? Anyway, I digress. So we come to the potion incident. We finished a major fight, and part of the loot was a bottle of something yellow with no label. I said I'd like to try a sip of the liquid to see what it is, potion or not. This is where I ucked up a little, because I probably should have clarified that I wasn't assuming the yellow stuff was a potion. Our bard, who I was already pissed at because she kept using hold person on me, the barbarian, whenever I raged. I'm lawful neutral, and you're doing unlawful things. Yup, even during fights. So DM says, sure, you can take a sip, but I want you to roll a percentage to see if you can notice anything that may help you identify it. Bard flips out. She starts freaking out that you can't do that, and it's not in the rules. Both the DM and her husband point out that the Dungeon Master Guide encourages you to make some rules your own. Bard argues with the entire table for 2 hours. I it you not. Me and my bestie kept track of the time, and eventually says, if you don't follow the rules of the Dungeon Master Guide to the letter, then we are not playing D&D. We're playing a itty homebrew RPG, and I am not participating. Even her husband at this point is ready to quit for the day, and he was one of the chillest people I knew. Out of spite, and totally over Bard's attitude to the game, she did things like this fairly regularly. I turn to the DM and say, I chug the whole bottle. He agrees, and I roll a percentage. Bard throws a huge tantrum and leaves the room to cry on her bed. Game was held at her house. While she is gone, DM tells me I feel a rush of energy, as if I could do anything. Potion of speed. We leave it there, as Bard is having a hissy fit, and Fighter/Warlock is comforting her, so we're missing 2 key party members. Next session, Bestie and I ditched D&D to go to the beach, as it was a lovely summer's day and we didn't want to deal with Bard that weekend. And Bard told us not to come back. We did anyway, of course, but the funny thing was, after this fiasco, the DM watched too much anime and decided to turn this campaign into a stupid anime RPG with no explanation. When we were teleported, Back to the real world, I said my barbarian had amnesia from the magic and didn't remember the weird anime second dimension, or whatever it was. The campaign went on for a little bit after the incident, but eventually dissolved due to player incompatibilities. What a shocker. Bard wanted us to play D&D 3 times a week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and me and Bestie just burnt the out and quit. Left with only a Bard, Warlock, and our weird cleric, who somehow both avoided any roleplay whatsoever and the weird potion argument, I actually completely forgot about him even existing until now. It did leave a sour taste in our mouths, and Bestie and I are still besties, but we don't play D&D anymore. Maybe one day we'll find some fun, chilled people to play with. Oof, here we have another player throwing a temper tantrum when they don't get their way. Tabletop RPGs seem to have this uncanny knack for attracting these kind of people, which is unfortunate. So let me start by saying that I, as a player, am one who appreciates the rules, and when playing and making characters, I tend to lean more towards official content or rules as written judgment calls. Now, that being said, I have no issues with others who prefer things like homebrew, provided it's not broken, of course, and I strongly believe in the DM's right to be flexible with said rules if they deem it necessary, whether it be for the rule of cool, which is always great, or a creative way to test or solve a problem that maybe isn't explicitly the way to do so. These are just a few examples, of course, and everyone obviously has their preferences, but that does not mean that you can just start screaming and throwing a tantrum whenever you disagree with a ruling. Bard comes across as extremely childish because of this behavior, and I would find it difficult to take anyone seriously who acted out this way, even if they were making a good point. Which she wasn't, by the way, because if she had actually read the Dungeon Master Guide, as pointed out in the comments section, it says, and I quote, "Potions are an exception. A little taste is enough to tell the taster what the potion does." Dungeon Master Guide, page 136. So the whole thing was irrelevant. In summary, if you disagree with a ruling, just wait until after the game and then talk to the Dungeon Master about it, or the group as a whole, and if you can't come to an agreement, then maybe it's not the game for you. Moving on, I'm not really sure what the motivation was behind casting Hold Person on OP's character when they raged. You know, which is what barbarians do. The lawful neutral thing sounds more like an excuse rather than a reason. When I was reading this story, I got the feeling that OP and Bard did not like each other, in or out of game, and the way they both came across was not very flattering for either of them. Bard was a child, and OP seemed antagonistic. I don't know the full history there, so I'm not going to go into the relationship. But let's quickly blast through a few other points in the story and then wrap things up. So DM apparently simping for Bestie was an irrelevant detail overall, but DMs, come on, don't do this. You're not going to get anywhere using D&D to try to get in someone's pants. Also, temporarily turning the campaign into some kind of isekai experience, it seems kind of a weird decision, especially in the middle of an existing adventure. If this is something you want to do, you're better off talking to the group and maybe starting a second campaign. OP and Bestie ditching a session is understandable if you're feeling burnt out and you need a break, but I hope that plenty of notice was given, because no-shows are super disrespectful and not something I would tolerate at my table. And lastly, I've never used the word bestie this much in succession, and I feel like my bird brain's gone a little numb, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Anyways, thanks for checking out my video and sticking around till the end. I upload new content every Tuesday and Friday, so make sure you check out my channel for more D&D stories. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave me a goosebump in the comments below. Your feedback and support is greatly appreciated. But until next time, be good players.